Man, I love Dreamworks. So many great films and some great TV shows. But everyone's already talked about all that, so why not talk about a part of Dreamworks history that is very chaotic to say the least? The video game adaptations. Now, last year I did do a marathon of Pixar games, so why not do the same for Dreamworks? But here's the thing. There are so many Dreamworks games. Like, you thought Pixar had a ton of games? DreamWorks has like 3 times as many games. Shrek alone has so many games, it could be its own marathon. And if I were bringing in not only the console games, but handheld games too, oh man, I'd go insane. So for this marathon, I'm gonna mainly stick to the DreamWorks games based on the actual films. Maybe I'll squeeze in a few of the spin-offs, but other than that, I'm mainly just gonna stick to the movie-based games for now. At least most of them. But if you read the title of this video, you might be wondering, hey, this isn't the first DreamWorks game. Ants, Chicken Run, and El Dorado had games before this. Heck, this isn't even the first Shrek game, so what gives? Well, for Ants, aside from the racing game, there is no console game based on the actual film's plot, and I want to save all the DreamWorks Game Boy games for like one giant video way later down the line. For Chicken Run, I feel it would be better to save it for a possible Aardman Games marathon, so that's why I'm not covering any of the Aardman games like Flushed Away and Wallace and Gromit in this marathon. And finally, as for El Dorado, I feel it would be kind of weird to start with this. I feel Shrek would be a more appropriate start to this marathon since, you know, it's Shrek. Don't get me wrong though, El Dorado is such a great film, you should watch it. So yeah, now that that's out of the way, let's actually get into the topic of this video. Shrek on Xbox. So this was actually a launch title for the original Xbox back in 2001. Yeah, no joke, it was one of the big games to get people to buy an Xbox. But I never heard about it back then since, one, I never had an original Xbox, and two, I never really heard people talk about Shrek 1's game. I always knew about the sequels video games, but never Shrek 1's game. So I always wondered as a kid, hey, where's Shrek 1's game? It should have had some sort of game. It was a huge hit back in 2001, and that was during the era where licensed games based on animated movies were really starting to come out. Literally every animated movie got some sort of video game adaptation. So when I finally found out about this game years later through other content creators, it was just bizarre finding out what exactly Shrek 1's game was. It was published by TDK. They did a variety of games from various franchises like Casper, Land Before Time, Aquaman, and of course some Shrek games. They would be bought by Take-Two Interactive, renaming themselves to Take-Two Licensing, which ended up being folded into 2K Games. Though, because of this deal, they would lose the Shrek license, and Activision would get the license, which we'll talk about in the next video. But what was really interesting finding out about this game was that it was developed by DICE. Yeah, like the Mirror's Edge, Battlefield, and EA Battlefront DICE. That was crazy to learn about. That's why I love looking at games like this. You could see what a developer's early beginnings was like. And let me tell you, this won't be the last example you'll see in this marathon. But okay, so I should have probably mentioned this before, but I am technically cheating by covering this game, as it's not really based on the first movie. Yeah, even though it's just called Shrek, it has little to do with the actual film. In fact, the only Shrek game that was based on the first film's plot was Hassle at the Castle for Game Boy Advance. But I have to cover this game here because I just find this game so fascinating. So Shrek finds out that Fiona has been kidnapped by Merlin, no relation to the Shrek the Third Merlin, and in order to get into his evil tower, Shrek needs to do enough good deeds so he can rescue Fiona and defeat Merlin. That's pretty much it. But aside from Shrek, the mirror, the swamp, and Fiona at the very end, there is nothing else from the original movie here. No donkey, no Farquaad, no dragon, no all-star. I think the fairylands you travel through are part of Duloc Hills, which I guess is supposed to be the same Duloc from the first film, maybe? I don't know. I will say, for a launch title for the original Xbox, I still think the graphics hold up pretty well, especially Shrek's model. I still think it's one of the best in-game Shrek models I've seen. The other character models, though, I'm a bit mixed on. If you notice on the cover of the game, it advertises that it features character designs from Todd McFarlane, aka the creator of Spawn. So the original characters made for this game have this very twisted and darker look. I don't mind these designs, but for this game, it clashes so hard with Shrek. Like, you'll see this goofy ogre running around levels with these realistic spiders, giant rats, and really twisted fairy tale characters. Nothing much to say about the soundtrack, it's pretty decent. I think my favorite pieces are The Crypt, Mother Gooseland, and Merlin's Tower. Those are really good tracks. So, this is a 3D platformer from the early 2000s, and my gosh, look how fast Shrek is. He's this big ogre, yet he's as fast as Sonic the Hedgehog. While I do find it amusing how Shrek is so fast in this game, it does make the controls really slippery. Like, it's something you can get used to, but even still, Shrek feels like he's running on butter throughout the game. In terms of moves, well, Shrek has a punch and a kick, but you can't actually kill any enemies. Like, you could beat them up as long as you want, but they'll keep getting back up, which I don't really like. It just makes the enemies way more annoying to deal with. Yeah, there are a few missions where, depending on the objective, you can take them out for good, but usually you can only knock them out for a limited amount of time. Shrek also can gas. Yeah, you have a gas meter where collecting onions fills it up, and I think you can guess what happens next. You can even get chili peppers to light your gas on fire. It's definitely weird, but hey, it's Shrek, so I guess it fits. You can also wall jump, which I swear, sometimes it works just fine, but other times, especially in the crypt, it's a nightmare to use. You have about 6 worlds to explore, not counting the swamp or the final level, with your objective being to perform enough good deeds in order to unlock the next level. Think the good deeds as like the power stars of this game. Heck, like Mario 64, you don't even need to do all of them. You only need to have a certain number of them to unlock the final stage. So that's nice that the game is pretty open on how you do things. It's just that the game is not very fun. Like, I had an okay time for the most part, but none of it was really fun. The worlds weren't awful. I actually like some of these set pieces, but some of these worlds were just tedious to get through. The crypt is way too dark. I get it's a cemetery, but you can barely see anything in this stage. It's a shame because the song on this stage slaps pretty hard. And then we have Molasses Sewers. Ugh, this world was awful. It's also really dark, and it's so big that it's really confusing trying to navigate through with all these connecting tunnels. But other than the 2 worlds I just mentioned, all the other worlds were fine enough. The missions / good deeds, again, most I found were okay, but they start to feel the same after a while. Most are either just grab something and bring it to something, or just gas something. They all just blend in with each other and don't really stand out as being memorable. There's also race mode, where it's the exact same missions, except you're on a time limit, and I did not bother with this, since the time limit is so strict and makes some of these missions nearly impossible to do. Plus, all you get is cheats. Yeah, no thanks. This game was also surprisingly really short. Like, you can beat this game in only 2 hours. No joke, for a 3D platformer, I did not expect that. Alright, look. I find this game fascinating for how it came to be, but actually playing it is so meh. I didn't hate it as much as other people did. I mean, back then this game came out, it was slammed by critics. There were things I did like about it, and there was nothing in the game that I really hated, but I didn't find most of it enjoyable, and the game overall is just mediocre. But did you know, this game is not an exclusive to the original Xbox. Nope, it actually got a port to the Gamecube 1 year later. And this might be one of the weirdest ports of a game I've ever seen. Like, on the surface, it just may seem like it's a simple port, but it's surprisingly really different. For one, the story was changed a little bit. Like, it's still about Shrek trying to save Fiona from Merlin, but this time Merlin demands Shrek to defeat the Ice Queen, who was just a minor boss in the original Xbox game, and retrieve his crystal ball. We actually have some more cutscenes with voice acting this time. The original Xbox game did have voice acting, but it was pretty small aside from the magic mirror at the beginning. Here, we actually have some more voice acting, and oh man, just listen.
You are here for the crystal ball, I assume. I do not understand why the Ice Queen conjured it here in the first place.
Well, you look like another disturbance in my miserable life. First, my summer castle's raided by a blue dragon. Thank you for the crystal ball, Shrek. My trusty knights have already brought it to me. As a thank you from me to you, I will let you live. But alas, Princess Fiona stays here.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible. Also, I like how in this cutscene before the final boss, Merlin has his normal voice, but as soon as you beat him, he has a completely different voice.
Ooh, you're playing hardball, are you? Well, come and get it, Ogre!
Oh, didn't see that coming.
Amazing. Shrek's model though, what happened here? Shrek looked great in the original Xbox game, but here? What is this? It looks like he's eating his own face, my gosh. The graphics definitely don't look as good as the Xbox game, which I do understand because we're on a system that is not as powerful as the Xbox, but could the game run well at least? Again, I'm not a frame rate stickler, but this game just chugs so much. Even in Shrek Swamp, look at this. It's so choppy and it actually made me nauseated after I finished recording. Shrek pretty much plays the same as he did in the Xbox game, except now he doesn't run crazy fast anymore, so the controls are fixed a little bit. I still don't think he controls that well, but it's better than how he was in the Xbox game. He also gets 2 new moves exclusive to this version, the belly flop and a super punch. I didn't use either of these too much, but they work fine enough, so no complaints from me. But okay, so while all the worlds from the original game are here, the structure and progression is pretty different. If Shrek on Xbox was structured like Mario 64, Shrek Extra Large on the Gamecube is structured like Mario Sunshine, where you have to do the main 4 missions in every world to finish the game. It's absolutely 100% mandatory, unlike the original Xbox game. This is a double-edged sword for me because, on the one hand, having to do some of these annoying missions that I already didn't like in the Xbox game was not fun, but at the same time, most missions were actually made easier this time. For instance, that one Valve mission in the Molasses Sewers, which was this annoying scavenger hunt, it's just this linear pathway you have to follow, making it way easier. Even some of the worlds are changed. Like the sewers look completely different, and even some of the names were changed. Like instead of Prince Charming's castle, yeah, no, this guy was supposed to be Prince Charming, it's just the Crown Prince's castle, and instead of the Red Dragon Castle, it's Blue Dragon Castle. There's also no race mode, which I don't really miss considering I didn't find race mode very fun in the Xbox game, so I actually consider this a plus. But probably the biggest addition Extra Large brings are 2 brand new worlds, the Enchanted Forest and the Lonely Mountain. I thought both of these were okay. Again, I didn't find the missions that fun, but they both weren't awful either, and the music for both worlds was really good, especially Lonely Mountain. That one is a really good track. Otherwise, yeah, I still didn't enjoy the game too much. In fact, as much as I like the changes Extra Large brings, I think I actually still prefer the Xbox version. The thing that really kills Extra Large for me is that frame rate. It's just so choppy. It legit made me feel nauseated looking at it. At least the Xbox version ran well, and hey, it didn't get me sick. Again, I'm not a frame rate stickler at all, but Shrek Extra Large's frame rate really is that bad. But yeah, both games aren't great. I can see what they were going for, and I really like the concept of a Shrek platformer. You can do a lot with that. But the missions feel the same after a while, the worlds are just meh, the controls were too slippery, I don't like how the enemies are, and I just didn't enjoy the game very much. The only stuff I liked were, again, the graphics, at least on the Xbox, still look pretty good, especially Shrek himself. The soundtrack is pretty good, and I do appreciate its legacy it left. Heck, the official Xbox Twitter even made a tweet about the game for its 20th anniversary, so it definitely left some sort of impact. It's far from the worst DreamWorks game I'm playing for this marathon. Let me tell you, some of these games later on, they get bad. But Shrek on the Xbox is just mediocre, and the extra large port on the Gamecube is just bad. I will say I did have a lot of fun researching this game, and reading through these old articles about it was so interesting. It was one of the first commercial games to use deferred shading, looking at these old screenshots and videos of the prototype that looked really different. There was this one Xbox preview about the game that apparently had Donkey in place of Fiona, so maybe that explains why he's on the GameCube's box art despite not appearing in the game. Probably the craziest thing I found was, according to this old post by someone who worked on the game, the entire game was apparently only made in around 9 months. Yeah, that's pretty crazy to find out. I'll leave links in the description for all these articles if you want to read at your own leisure. It's pretty interesting, but this is only the start to the DreamWorks Marathon, and hopefully we'll find some gems here and there. Next time though, we'll be looking at the first proper movie-based game, Shrek 2. If you liked this video, give it a like. If you're new to the channel, click that subscribe button, and if you played this game either on the Xbox or GameCube, let me know in the comments below what you think of it. I'm curious to see where your thoughts on it are. I hope you all have an amazing day and take care. Bye!